Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Laurie, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I'm your host, Laurie. And if you are new to our show, welcome. And if you're not new to our show, welcome. We are so happy that you're here. We're like plowing through 2024. Hopefully it's been good to you. And I just wanted to hit, before I bring out today's guest, a couple of talking points, things that are happening. So if you are not already subscribed to our ad-free listening option, just want to remind everybody that that is available through Apple subscriptions. So wherever you are listening to podcasts, if you decide that you would prefer to not have the interruption throughout our episodes, totally get it. I know that can sometimes be distracting, and that's why we have an ad-free option. And you can absolutely just click that button and you won't have any of those distractions throughout our episodes. We also get early drops for those people, and we have some other kind of bonus things for our people that are our subscribers. If you choose to continue to listen to us on whatever streaming platform, Spotify, Amazon Music, whatever, and you don't mind interruptions, thank you for supporting our sponsors. We are just grateful that you are here. The other thing is, a lot of people did not realize that we have a YouTube channel. We do. And so if you are somebody that would prefer to watch our episodes, we're here for it. I actually was surprised at how many people actually subscribe and watch our podcast, just as somebody who is an audio podcast listener. That's not usually my general default, but for a lot of those people, you want to consume your podcast that way. So check out This Organized Life podcast on YouTube as well. We appreciate your support wherever you are listening or watching. Okay, now, enough of housekeeping. Let's get into today's guest. So one of the things that we talk about quite a lot here is about the abundance of clothes that people consume, and how a lot of times people's reluctance to get rid of clothes has to do with what I call emotional clutter. And it has to do with that feeling of guilt of, maybe I don't want to have this end up in a landfill, because statistics show that we have this consumption problem in the United States when it comes to clothing. And there are many different opportunities and ways for you to either think differently, shop differently. And we want to just be able to provide options for you. And so when I came across the company Helpsy, I was immediately intrigued, and I reached out to them and said, I would love to have you guys come on our show, talk a little bit about your mission, share some interesting facts, and then just let people know what they can do with their unwanted, unused clothes. So joining me today is Lisa Shanella, and Lisa is the Chief of Staff of Helpsy, a company dedicated to textile waste. And I know these numbers can be kind of crazy, but according to the stats I have, and I'm reading this, it says 85% of clothes wind up in the trash. And a lot of us are used to recycling plastics, glass, metals, paper, all the recycling things, but shoes, clothes, accessories are not often considered things that people recycle. And according to the statistics that I have, and I'm going to ask Lisa, she probably has some more updated ones, over 10% of the landfills are made up of textiles. So that again would be clothing and drapes and sheets and towels, all that stuff. And the amount per person is staggering, which we're going to talk about. But the good news is that there are ways that we can reduce that. And we are going to talk all about how each of us can be part of the solution of reducing the amount of textile waste. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Lisa Shanella to the show. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here and talk about not only like clothing waste, but also just organizing and how that fits together. So yeah, the
Absolutely.
numbers are absolutely crazy. I think people think about paper and cardboard and aluminum as like recyclable, and that we kind of are at this point trained to like separate that out of the trash. I think there's a giant misconception with clothing, especially clothing that is stained or is missing a sock that's missing a pair, or like, oh, nobody wants this, I can't donate it, I should just put it in the trash. And that's actually not true. While it may not have value as clothing anymore, like, it's true, nobody wants your like single sock with a hole as a sock. But if it's an absorbent material, there actually is a very vibrant secondhand market for things as materials. So um, you also alluded to like we have a consumption problem, which we do in the United States, and it kind of extends to things beyond clothing. But I'm sure we've all heard the three R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and they're in order of importance. So we need to be mindful of what we are consuming and seeing where we can reduce. But then the second R is really what helps you focuses on reuse. So if you don't want your clothing, whatever condition it's in, whatever textile it is, we will do the hard work of matching up like how it needs to be reused or how it can be reused, because there's a tremendous amount of resources that go into creating new clothing, from carbon emissions to like, I think it's one t-shirt takes 2,700 gallons of water to create. So we want to restore and like protect those resources, and the best way we can do it is by reusing clothes that already exist. So the most sustainable clothes are clothes that already exist.
Which is staggering. Because you think about it, and as somebody who kind of is on the other side, right, as a professional organizer, and I'm sitting there and I'm working with people to not just develop healthy habits and again address the consumption issue, but then it's like, okay, what are we doing with these things? And like you said, we try to donate as much as we can, but there are plenty of things, like you said, errand socks, old t-shirts, and things that are stained, worn, whatever, and you're just like, what do I do with them? And I've been guilty of throwing those things in the trash because I'm like, nope, I'm not going to donate them. They're not ones that nobody's going to want, a single sock or a sock in general. What do you do with that? So talk a little bit before we kind of get into all the things. Why don't you just give an overview of Helpsy, just for our listeners who are not familiar with the company?
Thanks. So Helpsy exists for two reasons. So our mission is to keep clothes out of the trash, right? I say
Mhm.
clothes, but that's all textiles. And secondly, to provide honorable work for our employees.
Mm.
So Helpsy has been around for 7, maybe 8 years now, and it started as the acquisition of 3 bin companies, just traditional like bins you may see in the parking lot where people are dropping off clothes, and we've expanded to do um, some sorting of our clothing, because what we want to do is take away like the hard work of figuring out what needs to go where. Like, okay, if this is really nice, I should consign it, or this is medium level, I could donate it to Goodwill. This is tattered. We can take it all and figure out how to best extend the life of that garment or that item, because we really are the experts in that. And we have a network where, like, yes, we do have a network where like someone will use or want that material that's not viable as clothing anymore. So we cover 10 states in the Northeast. That's our footprint. We
Okay.
are South Carolina up to New Hampshire. We skip North Carolina, and we have about 2,000 collection points. So the bins that I mentioned, we also work with a lot of schools, thrift stores, because there's thrift stores create their own textile waste. They don't sell everything that they get.
Yeah.
So for smaller stores, we basically buy the things that they couldn't move. And it could just be, geographically, they didn't find the right person who was that size of that garment, but there's nothing wrong with it and somebody else would want it. Um, the larger thrift stores, if you think of like Salvation Army or Goodwill, they also have textile waste, but they're large enough that they have their own warehouses and they can handle their salvage on their own.
Yeah, and that's interesting because again, I do when I take a client's donations for them as part of our service, I have relationships with local donation sites, and I know that they struggle with excess too, and so I think you bring up a valid point where there's certain things that times of year. I have a friend that owns a consignment store. And so again, they're struggling too, because we think about, I always talk about passing like your clutter torch, and not everything
Right.
can get, it's like, oh, okay, I don't want it like hot potato. I'm going to pass it along to
Yeah,
somebody
should be
else.
like, okay, it's not my problem anymore.
Yes, exactly. And we oftentimes think about like, once it's out of our hands, it's out of sight, out of mind, but then where is it going down, down the lane? And, you can have people that aren't thinking about it, but then you get the other side of people where I've got some very socially conscious clients, and we have a lot of listeners out there that are like, I don't want to be part of the problem. And yes, they have the consumption, but then they hold on to it.
Right.
And it's just taking up space, and that's not serving anybody well. And so it's like, what do I do with it? So right now you guys are in those. So if you're in and we'll link to your website, obviously, for anybody that's listening out there. So if you're on the East Coast corridor and you happen to be fortunate enough to have like a Helpsy location near you, that would be great. But for what about the people that are outside of that geographic area? What are some ways that people can dispose of their stuff responsibly?
So I would say if you're outside of our footprint, you want to research where clothing collection bins are. You can usually, I would just start with like a Google search. You could also reach out to your municipality's like recycling coordinator, because they would usually know what services are around. We work with a lot of municipalities, so I'm sure in other areas of the country there are other operators. We do think of the main um, competitor, so to speak, aren't other bin operators, aren't thrift stores, isn't Goodwill, isn't Salvation Army. It's really the landfill, because that they're still getting 85% of all the clothes. So 85% of the clothes are still going to landfill. So all of us collectors, all the clothing drives, all the churches that collect clothes, all of us together are only getting 15% of the pie. So there is really the best thing that we can do is find someone to reuse it. So if you find a collection company near you, you can also reach out to the recycling coordinator. Um, you could also do like a lot of on Facebook. I think you can find like local swaps. A lot of community groups are doing like swap groups, which is awesome, because we really just want to keep the clothing in circulation longer. Obviously, if you have kids or a family, anything that to like secondhand clothes and hand me downs, that kind of keep stuff in circulation longer is what we want. In other cultures, it's like the norm. I think it was in Sweden, I read that the norm for like a baby shower gift is like a box of reused stuff. So it's like from the community, everybody that's had a kid, like, and that's normal, like to receive secondhand, and then it gets passed on, and they're really taking care of their resources, and it's higher quality stuff that can kind of last. Um, which is great. So anything that you
Yeah.
can do to like not keep it in the trash. I think it's also important for people to know that even the single sock or the torn t-shirt can have a life. It's not trash. It still has value as a material.
I love that. I love that. What are some of the things, just to let people know, like, what are some of the ways that those are reused and repurposed? Those single socks, those
Yeah.
worn, stained, torn t-shirts.
Great question. So I'll speak to kind of how it flows through at Helpsy. So let's say
Yeah,
that
yeah, please
gets
do.
dropped off at a bin. What's going to happen to that is it'll be sold in a bulk quantity. So that means 40,000 pounds at a time. It's going to be packaged into a bale to someone. You're probably thinking, like, who's going to buy 40,000 pounds of compressed clothing at a time? And the answer is it's a sorter or grader. So it's probably somebody who has a lot of thrift stores, is looking for inventory. They have a sorting operation. They may also have mechanical recycling
Okay.
options. So for the cotton t-shirt or the sock that's doesn't make the cut as clothing anymore, they'll either grind it or cut it into a wiper rag. So it could be a wiper rag would be the next best thing we could do with clothing. It's still absorbent. They can use it in the industry. If it's not absorbent or it's not big enough, whatever it is, it could be ground up as like stuffing or insulation. These are all like mechanical processes. Um, so at least we're kind of keeping it out of the landfill and using it again. So the best thing we can do for clothes is reuse it as clothing, reuse it as clothing, reuse it as clothing. When it's no longer reusable or desirable as clothing, okay, can we use it as something else? Is it absorbent? Can it be used to stuff something? 95% of the time, the answer is yes, we can use it for something else before just trashing it. There's an organization, Smart, and they assert that 95% of textiles can be reused or recycled. So it could
Wow.
be covered either as clothing or as an absorbent something. 5%, if it's wet, if it's moldy, if it's contaminated, then it's truly trash and we can't save it. So the
Wow.
kind
That's
of the
crazy.
challenge, yeah,
95%.
could be
That's
used for something.
that's crazy. Yeah. So walk us through. So I thank you for doing that. So let's assume that we have somebody like myself, Pennsylvania, right? So I'm within your geographic footprint. So how does it work? How does Helpsy directly work? So would I go to the Helpsy website? Would I just look for a bin? Give us the logistics of somebody. What would be the process for somebody to go through?
So if you are just looking for a place to drop off your stuff and make sure that it's handled responsibly, you go on our website, helpsy.co/find a bin. You type in your address and it'll show you like the 5 closest bins to you. If you're looking to get more involved and maybe like host a community drive, which by the way, are fundraisers. So not only are you keeping clothes out of the trash,
I
but
was
like,
going to
okay,
ask, that was one of my questions about that, but go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, so let's say your kid's baseball team is raising money for new equipment. Cool, we can do a drive and actually pay you per pound of what we collect. So we take things in all conditions. We actually started sorting things at our warehouse a couple of years ago. We don't sort everything we get. We collect about 31 million pounds a year. So by volume, most of the stuff is sold in bulk quantities, but we do actually sell to smaller operations in smaller packs, selected inventory.
Okay.
So it could be sorted at our warehouse in New Jersey too, is another option, particularly if you're in Pennsylvania. Like we're servicing
Yeah.
you out of Eatontown. So that means if your community has a clothing drive and you're like, well, I don't want all my stuff to get like, destroyed. We wouldn't treat necessarily a brand new pair of Jordans the same way as that single sock that we've been talking about this whole time. So allowing us to sort it in our warehouse will match it with its next best use. So that's a small percentage of what we collect, we actually sort. However, it is a growing percentage. And that's pretty exciting. We do events quite often. We have one on Saturday. So you could also check out our website for upcoming events.
Okay.
Um, if you're looking to get involved in like host a drive or something like that, you can reach out to me directly or info@helpsy.co. All we need is a time and a place, and
Which is
then we'll
great.
send
It's
a truck.
so easy. And again, so my kids are grown now. I have a 20 and a 23-year-old, but when they were in school, I was super involved in all different types of fundraising efforts and whatnot. And the clothing drives, and our school does a clothing drive. And I wonder, I never was the one in charge of it, but I wonder if they coordinate it through Helpsy, because we've had a bunch of those clothing drives and I obviously promote them being an organizer. And I'm like, guys, gather your
Yes.
stuff, gather. So my question also, since you do textiles, is it just clothes? Do you take sheets? Do you take towels? Do you take stuffed animals, blankets? Like, let me know, like, what are the other things that people could put in bins, whether they're doing a clothing drive or they're dropping their stuff in a bin?
We take it all. We take it all. So yes, stuffed animals, yes, bedding, yes, tablecloths, yes, drapes, anything that's like fabricy, shoes, accessories, jewelry, anything. Yeah.
Wait,
And we actually,
jewelry?
yeah, jewelry, anything that's like an accessory.
Oh my gosh. It's like literally everything. And again, if we're starting to come into that guilt of like, I'm throwing it in a bin, it's then we need to kind of reshift, because it's a both and. It's not, it's that what are we bringing in? Are we shopping responsibly? How much are we consuming? But then also when we are cycling through things, are we cycling out responsibly? So I think, again, a lot of times people confuse the bringing in, the consumption part,
Hmm.
with the getting rid of things. And
Right.
we're
We don't want it to
connected,
be
right?
trashed. Like use it again. And I think certainly it was the case before I was involved with Helpsy. You see the containers and then you're like, where does it go? Who's even like servicing them? Like
Right.
I don't want to put my stuff in there. But knowing that it's going to an organization that really does care about what happens to it and matching quality items with next use, hopefully kind of helps us overcome that guilt of like I don't want to I don't need to hang on to this. I know that it's going to be used the best way that it can be used in the future. And we are very proud to be a B Corp. which means that we have been vetted by a third party for our responsible practices when it comes to, the environmental impact that we have, but also socially with our employees and in the community. So something that I'm proud to share is 73% of our workforce is diverse, 37% of senior management is female, and 37%, coincidentally, this not the same 37%, were internal hires, like internal promotions of the senior management. So it is
Love
a
it.
great company to work for. The three co-founders, Alex, Dan, and Dave, really very strongly in providing honorable work for their employees. So something that makes us unique also is the pay structure for our drivers, for example. They're paid an hourly wage, but then they're also incentivized and paid a commission essentially for every pound that they bring in. So they work really, really hard. This past year, we had 7 drivers who each collected individually over the course of the year 1,000,000 pounds or more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I
So that
mean,
means that they handled 1,000,000 pounds at
they
least
kept 1,000,000 pounds of stuff out of landfills. I mean,
on
again,
their own. Yeah.
which is just like mind boggling to think about. Those numbers are staggering. So,
Yeah,
wow.
it's huge. And we estimate, it's hard to know for sure, but we estimate that out of the area that we service, we're only getting 1% of the clothing waste.
Wow. Which is,
So there's a lot out there.
there's a lot out there. So I'm so glad that we're able to shine a light on Helpsy, and hopefully you're listening out there and it's making you either or a rethink how you're disposing of the stuff that you have, and also knowing that there are options out there so that you don't have to be contributing to a landfill, that you can be part of the solution, that there are ways that you can responsible recycle responsibly and repurpose and reuse and all the things. And again, like you said, know that your stuff is going to be handled um, responsibly with,
Yeah, I think there's something else to be said for the majority of our clothing, even the stuff that's sold in, containers at a time. It's mostly sold domestically. So we take pride in making sure that we're not passive. What did you call it? Pass the clutter.
yeah, I
We're
call it
not
the club
playing that
passing the
game.
clutter torch. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not just collecting it and shipping it off to some other country to have it be their problem. We really want to make sure that clothes aren't trash. They're not ending up in the landfill, and we take that to heart. We do have a couple of customers in warmer weather areas,
Mm-hmm.
and when they get too much winter clothing clutter, she'll call it, we'll buy it back from them, whether it came from us or from somebody else, because we'll find a home for it. Same with plus size clothing. Sometimes they accumulate too much, triple XL, and their people are smaller than we are, and they're like, we don't need this,
Right.
and we'll buy it back from them, just to make sure that it's not someone else's problem and it's not becoming trash.
Yeah. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but because I'm sure there are people that are, again, outside of your geographic footprint that are like, oh my God, I wish you were here. Does the company have plans on expanding to, other parts of the
That's it.
country?
That's a great question. Where we are right now is focusing on density. So logistically, it's makes sense for us to kind of fill in the spots. Like we said, we're only getting 1% of
Yeah.
of the clothes in the areas that we are. Um, so for now, that's kind of what we're thinking. We do work um, across all what is the lower 48 states in through our Helpsy source business. So
Okay.
the collection business is, the bulk, 40,000 pounds at a time that we sell it to, big sorters and graders. But like I mentioned, we also sort some clothing and we sell it in smaller quantities, and that's by brand and condition. So, for example, we'll sort by brand and be like, okay, Lululemon's a great brand that someone would reasonably want to buy it again. Someone would post it on eBay. It would sell, like, it's in good condition, someone would buy it again. So we would sell, for example, 5 packs of Lululemon on our website, and someone who is a reseller could buy it. They wouldn't know necessarily the style or the size, but they'll be okay. I'm buying 5 pieces of Lululemon. I don't know the size or the color, but I know that it's like been condition checked. I know it's a popular brand. People want it. I can take pictures of it, post it on Mercari or Poshmark or eBay, and I can make a profit.
Sure.
So we do that and sell to resellers all across the country. Also to supply thrift stores. So it could be a brick and mortar store that's, they're typically at the mercy of whatever comes through their door when it comes to inventory of like what they collect. I'm not sure if this is the case for your consignment shop friend.
Mhm.
Is they don't get to like pick what people drop off or consign
No,
with them.
that's absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
So
So
if there's a store that's like, okay, I want a whole rack of Lululemon all the time, or a rack of
interesting.
Calvin Klein,
Yeah,
whatever brands that they know their customers like, they can buy it from us.
that's
Um,
awesome. I'll have to
yeah.
connect you with my friend
Yeah.
because
But
that's
it's
awesome.
certainly like if you are cleaning out your closet, and you're like, okay, well these are, nice brands, I could consign them. You totally should consign them if you're willing to like put in the extra time to do that. But sometimes it's just so overwhelming. Like then I gotta make
Well,
an account and I gotta link it to payment and I gotta take pictures of it and then I have to ship it and I have to answer someone's questions.
yeah, I say that to people all the time. I have no problem if people want to consign, resell, whatever. It's just you have to think of that as another job for you
Exactly.
during that season.
Yeah.
But again, if your option is, you know, I want you to take action in one way, shape, or form. And
Right.
I love that this is an
Yeah, and sometimes it's, I can speak from like personal experience. Sometimes it's just easier to like bag everything up, know it's going to be handled properly, and then just start fresh. And then, okay, from now on, I'll consign 2 items a year. But if you're going through a backlog of, a decade of buys, that might be, a paralyzing lift.
Sure, sure, absolutely. So again, I know you mentioned it, but tell our listeners where they can learn more about Helpsy, get involved if they want, learn about hosting a clothing drive or a fundraiser, all the things. What's the best place?
Best place would be our website, helpsy.co. You can reach out to info@helpsy.co if you have specific questions. My email is lisa@helpsy.co. I'm happy to talk or point you in the right direction of how to get involved or get started. We really try to make it as easy as possible. If you want to host a bin, fantastic. We'll make that into a fundraiser. You want to do a clothing drive? Great, we can do that. If you want your municipality to offer home pickups, because it's something else that we do in certain states, we will pick up for free from your house.
Wait, you do? Wait, you do home
Mhm.
pickups too?
We do. Yeah, and we
Hold
do.
the phone. I didn't know that. Look, people, I was today years old when I knew about the bins. I didn't realize that you did home pickup. So that's great also because that is totally low hanging fruit if you have home pickup available in your region because you don't even have to put it in your car to take it somewhere to drop it off.
Right.
I
Right.
gotta
So when we talk about, textile waste, okay, we're only getting 15% of the pie, all of us collectors together. We need to make, clothing collection and disposal convenient. So
yes.
it just has to be convenient, right? We're in, I almost said 2023, but we turned page. We're 2024. People can order stuff on their phones and have it show up same day sometimes. Like stuff needs to be convenient in order for it to be more compelling than the trash, right? So
Yeah.
wherever possible, it's like we want bins and it's densely um, available in an area as possible. So it's like, oh, I'm on my way to my kid's school. Anyways, I can drop off. Or I went to the grocery store. Boom, I can drop off. I was at the pharmacy where it's not an extra chore out of the way. Some people prefer a home pickup. Some people like the deadline of having a clothing drive. Like, oh, my town's doing a drive this weekend. That means I got to get all my stuff collected.
Yeah.
Um, it's different strokes for different folks. And we try to meet as many of those needs as we can.
I love it. I think it's great. Again, we're going to connect up. I actually have some ideas. My wheels are turning here for stuff locally where we are because fortunately, like I said, we fall within your geographic footprint. So if you are listening and you are on the East Coast, anywhere between South Carolina and New Hampshire, with the exception of North Carolina, definitely check out Helpsy's website to see how you can get involved and utilize their amazing, amazing service. So,
And in Pennsylvania,
yeah.
we partner, well, across our network, we partner with hundreds of nonprofits. One of them that we work with in Pennsylvania is the Wardrobe. They're
Okay.
based in Philly. So some of your listeners may be familiar, but we also do home pickups in partnership with the wardrobe. So that means for every garment that we pick up, the wardrobe is also benefiting financially to support their mission. So in Chester County and Montgomery County and Bucks County, we do home pickups.
Boom. Bucks County.
Okay,
That's
cool. I
it.
was hoping you'd be one of those.
That's it. Winner, 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 chicken dinner. So
So it's like you'll get rid of your stuff. We'll be
I am
handling it. The
all
wardrobe's
about it.
benefiting.
I'm gonna have Helpsy drivers coming right through my neighborhood, and we'll be putting it out there. I
Awesome.
love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, all right, Lisa, this has been really, really fun and informative. And I want everybody, again, not to the whole purpose of this is not to shame people about the amount of consumption. We want people to
No.
be shopping smart and bringing stuff in wisely, but we also realize that there are things that we need to get rid of. And sometimes there are things, whether they're, just old and live their life, or you just don't want them anymore, or
Yeah.
not, that it's time for it to go. And we need to be
And
able
it
to do it
shouldn't be
responsibly.
like exactly what you're saying, like to shame, like go out and buy whatever you want. Buy lots of new outfits. When you can, buy them secondhand. When you're done with them, consign them, put them to the thrift store so someone else can enjoy it. That's
Yeah.
my thing is like if I worn it 3 times and I was photographed in enough on my
Yeah.
own personal, then I'm done with it and I don't need to feel any guilt about giving it back to the world so somebody else can use it. Like it should be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. It's exactly. You're not getting any money back with it sitting on your shelf. That's what I tell people all the time. I was like, you know what? You feel guilty about that because you bought those shoes and they don't fit you, or you don't like them, or you don't like the way that, those
Hmm.
jeans make your butt look, or whatever. You know what? It's that ship sail, people. Just, it's okay.
Yeah.
Have peace. Move on. Godspeed.
Yeah. And the physical clutter of having it there, it
Absolutely.
bleeds into it being like a mental clutter too.
Yes.
Like then you look at it every day and then you're reminded of that guilt or whatever. I went through a big KonMari Marie Kondo phase during
Yes.
COVID. So I'm like, yes, all about it. Like clean,
Love it.
fresh slate.
Love it. Okay. So before I let you go, I know we weren't talking so much about you personally. We were talking about Helpsy, but I love to ask all of our guests just some wrap up questions to get a little bit more insight into you. Are you a reader by any chance? Do you like to read?
Yes, I just finished 2 books yesterday. I was on a flight, so I, I finished one book and then started the
Oh
next.
my gosh. Okay. So, always looking for great book recommendations. We pass them on, we put them on our shop page. So if people are like looking for good books, has there been a book that you either recently read or something that you come back to that has been really like impactful, transformational, or inspirational in your life that you want to share with our listeners? Or it could just be a fun, good read.
I'm just going to share the fun stories that I read yesterday. So I was reading Built to Last by Jim Collins. It's about
Nice.
visionary businesses versus comparison businesses that weren't quite next level. So that was really interesting. I finished that one. And then I picked up Britney Spears' memoir, The Woman in Me. And I
I
read
just
that one
bought the.
too.
Did you like it?
Yes.
Okay. I've heard to be honest, I've heard mixed reviews about it. I haven't read it. I actually bought it for my niece for Christmas. So she hasn't read it yet, but I was like, oh,
Yeah. So it was like a little bit of a different,
love it.
some variety there. It was interesting to read her perspective and
I'm
what
sure.
she's overcome.
Crazy, crazy. And then our last two questions that we ask every guest in every series that we do is, in this particular season of your life, where do you, excuse me, where do you feel the most organized in your life? And where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess? And it doesn't have to just be physical clutter. It could be your calendar, emotional clutter, finances, wherever.
I will say I did read your book, Hot
Oh,
Mess. I did, and I enjoyed that. What was eye opening to me about your book is like I never thought of calendar as clutter. I've
mhm.
never like framed it that way. I framed it as like it's important to have free time. You know what I mean? To not be so booked, but really what it is it's calendar clutter. So framing it that way, for me was eye opening. And I'm like, it's the same thing. I think I'm kind of like over the top on like my physical clutter. I want nothing on my counters. I have 2 young kids. Their toys are never visible. Like, I think I got that under control. But thinking about my calendar as being cluttered was important. So that's something I need to work on. Is I think I'm overbooked.
I, lo-
And
I
yeah, and so
love
it's like,
that.
okay, well, instead of viewing it as I'm, procrastinating or pushing something off, it's like, no, I'm taking control of my calendar. I'm saying no to this for this week because that's going to add more clutter to my life and I don't need it.
I love it. Oh, and thank you. Thanks for the shout out. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was good.
So awesome. Well, Lisa, it was a pleasure chatting with you, learning about Helpsy. I'm so grateful for the work that you guys are doing. And as always, we want to just be giving resources to all of you out there so we can make your decluttering journey as painless as possible and have you feel as good as you possibly can as you kind of like go through life and cycle out the old and bring in the new. So if you're not already subscribed
Thank
to
you
our
so
show,
much.
yeah, thanks so much. And if you're not already subscribed to our show, make sure to just click the subscribe, follow button wherever you are listening. And if you like this episode, please share it with a friend. That's how we grow, by word of mouth, reviews, all the things. So thanks so much. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, I'm Laurie Plow. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love and share it with your friends. And if this is your first time joining us, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth the listen. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram at This Organized Life Podcast. And if you'd like to connect with us, you can head on over to our website at simply the letter B like boy organized.com, which is filled with tons of resources, including free downloads, checklists, links to our amazing organizing partners, and all of our digital offerings. I'll see you next week for another episode of This Organized Life.